Hello everyone that is joining us and those that will join us later by the recording. On behalf of Green Seminary Initiative, I want to welcome you to this webinar. My name is Sarah Macias. I am Program Associate for Green Seminary Initiative, or GSI, as we sometimes call it. There are two other representatives with me of Green Seminary Initiative, and they will introduce themselves in just a moment. The purpose of this call is to answer any questions that you might have regarding the new Seminary Environmental Certification Program. And as most of you know, this program is being launched with a pilot cohort group of 5 to 7 seminaries, which will be selected this summer from an application process. The application period is open now and closes on June 15th. If you missed last month's webinar where we introduced the program, you can still listen to it and review the support materials by going to the homepage of our website, which is greenseminaries.org. But first, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. So if everyone could mute their lines except when you're speaking, that will prevent any background noise from interfering. This call is being recorded, and the recording will be shared so that others who are interested can listen in later. We would invite people to hold their questions, if you have any, until after 2 very brief introductory presentations. But right now, let's go ahead and get started with some introductions, first with Fletcher and Laurel. If they would introduce themselves, say how you have come to be involved in GSI and what role that you have with GSI.
This is Fletcher Harper. I'm the Executive Director of Green Faith, which is an interfaith environmental organization. And we're privileged and pleased, along with Drew Theological School, to be the co-host of the Green Seminary Initiative. And we've been working on this particular seminary environmental certification project with GSI over the last 18 months, building off of the experience that we have through an analogous green certification program for congregations. So it's great to be here.
Great. And Laurel?
And I'm Laurel Kearns. I teach at Drew Theological School, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Green Seminary Initiative, with a vision that if we're not teaching tomorrow's religious leaders about these issues, then we're preparing them for yesterday. So I've been with this whole development of the certification program and the many sort of phases of the Green Seminary Initiative, and it's just really exciting to be at this place with so much interest. The website and the Facebook page and everything under Sarah's great leadership has been wonderful. So my other co-founder, Beth Norcross, was not able to be with us today. She teaches at Wesley.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone.
Now we'd like to know who is on the call with us. We've already met a few of you, but if we could each allow you to go around and take turns introducing yourself by your name, what school you're representing, and what position you hold.
Sarah, it might be good for you to call out names because otherwise we get the sort of electronic version of a traffic jam.
Great idea. I know that Trinity Lutheran is represented. Hank, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hank Langnecht. I'm a professor of homiletics and communication, but as of this year have also been the advisor for the student ecological group, and am now sort of steering the environmental process of the seminary initiative. And also in the room is Ron Benedict, who is our VP of operations, who is obviously a key player in the building and maintenance side.
Wonderful. Faith Harris, did I see that you were on the call?
Yes, I'm Faith Harris. I am adjunct professor in theology at Virginia Union University. Actually, it's the Samuel G. Wood Proctor School of Theology at Virginia Union University. And so I'm here representing Virginia Union.
Great. And did I see Linda Gibler?
Hi, I'm Linda Gibler from the Oblate School of Theology in San Antonio, Texas. I am the Associate Academic Dean here, and I also coordinate the basically the ecology committee here for the school.
Great. And you serve on the advisory committee for Green Seminary Initiative. So
That I do.
we're glad that you're with us today.
Thanks.
Anyone that I missed?
My name's Ed Ablard. I'm down Episcopalian and down in Wilmington, North Carolina, and have been active with Green Faith probably over the same 18 months and following your seminars with my rector, who is Dina Burrell, and we're both at St. Paul's Episcopal Church here in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Great. Welcome, Ed. Anyone else?
This is Tim Van Meter from MTSO in Ohio, and I just joined the call.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Another Green Seminary Initiative Advisory Committee member.
And
I'm Hillary Floyd. I'm at the Wake Forest School of Divinity in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I work with Fred Monson, our director of the Food, Faith, and Religious Leadership Initiative here.
Wonderful.
Folks.
And Aaron Christensen has chatted. Do you see that, Sarah?
What was that?
There's a message from Aaron Christensen, who's also on the call from Iliff School of Theology.
Okay.
The division, she is the division coordinator, and her computer is cranky
Okay.
with audio.
All right.
She'll be chatting, it looks like.
Great. Anyone else?
Yes, this is Felicity Kelkers. I just joined the call by phone because, I haven't gotten up on my computer yet.
Great, Felicity. And everyone is identifying themselves by the school that they're representing and position that you hold.
Yes, so I'm at Christian Theological Seminary, which is in Indianapolis, and I'm Associate Professor of Pastoral Care and Counseling.
Great.
And another long-time person with the Green Seminary Initiative.
Yes. Anyone else? Okay, well, I think that's it. Welcome again. In this call, what we're going to do is first give a brief overview of the Seminary Environmental Certification Program. I'm going to walk us through the process that participating seminaries will follow. And then Fletcher will review the standards for the program. After that, we're going to have plenty of time to open it up and respond to any questions that you may have. The process for seminaries participating in the certification program is built on the successful model of the congregational certification program that has been led by Green Faith for the last several years. Now, congregations are different than seminaries, so we have received extensive input over the last couple of years from seminary faculty, students, staff, and administrations to help create a program that we have ready to launch. The process begins with gaining commitment from some of these stakeholders that are listed here, so that it's not simply a personality-driven process. Forming a representative team, what we're calling a green team, is the first step, and that actually begins in the application period, which is the season that we're in right now in the life of this certification program. The green team, if we look at the next slide, begins by performing a self-audit in the fall. So once the pilot cohort seminaries are selected and we know which seminaries are going to be in the program, then the green teams for those particular seminaries will hit the ground running in the fall by going through a self-audit that will be due by the end of January. The audit will be basically a reflection of the standards that Fletcher will go over in a few minutes, which is organized around the 5 focus areas that Green Seminary Initiative has always been organized around: education, liturgy, ritual, and worship, building and grounds, community life, and public leadership. So, with the audit as a first step, once you know where you are in each of these 5 areas, then it's going to be much easier to determine where you might go through the development of an action plan, which will be due by mid-April in 2017. We can go to the next slide there. Fletcher, thanks. Throughout the process of the audit, throughout the process of developing the action plan, the great value that this process has is that you're not alone. Green Seminary Initiative will continue to be available for feedback and consultation every step of the way. And perhaps the greatest added value comes from the collegial relationship that the pilot cohort seminaries will have within themselves as they compare notes on whatever proposed programs or projects that they're considering, and as they begin implementing their action plans as early as possibly next spring. That way they can learn from each other, they can encourage one another along the way, and we really hope and anticipate that there might be opportunities for this seminary to seminary communication on these areas of interest to continue beyond the 3-year certification program. So throughout the action plan phase of the process, the other detail that's listed on that 4th bullet there, or 3rd bullet, is that we want to know how you're doing. We want to know how things are going, and so every 4 months, the participating seminaries could provide Green Seminary Initiative a very simple, not complicated progress report that just kind of says how you're doing, and it might give us an opportunity to share some stories along the way through our newsletter, through our website, and through Facebook. The next slide, of course, gets us to the end of the process, where at the end of the 3 years, it's going to be time to celebrate, because your school will be officially named as a certified environmental seminary. And we're going to have a party. We don't know what that's going to look like, but there may be many parties, because you will be the model at that point for showing others how to move forward in some of these greening efforts. And then the work doesn't stop there. There's always more that we can do. And so every year, if we could get an update from you as to how things are going and what new ideas and programs you've got planned, we can continue to share those success stories and learn from you. So that's just pretty much it in a nutshell as far as the process. And now Fletcher is going to go over briefly and give us a review of the standards for certification.
Thanks, Sarah. And I'd like to, one of the things that I'd like to mention at the outset is that our experience working with congregations ranging in size from congregations of 25 people up to congregations of 9,000 people is that it's very important when it comes to these standards and guidelines to be focused on the spirit and the intent of the standards as opposed to the letter of the law. What we've found is that in a very consistent manner, we've adapted certain requirements based on the contexts that we find in different congregations, and we expect that that'll be the same working with seminaries. And so as I go through these requirements, I know that it's very easy to hear them and to start to have anxiety build because you're not certain what a certain requirement might look like in your context, or what might happen if it was simply impossible to do a certain thing. So I'd like to encourage you to see us as colleagues with that. We're very, very good and experienced at adapting requirements to fit the circumstances of very, very different contexts. The other thing I'll say right up front is that one fundamental difference between many seminaries and schools of theology and divinity schools are that some are formally related to larger university systems, whereas others stand on their own. And we're well aware that for those schools that are embedded within larger universities, there are certain things, for instance, about your own facilities and your own grounds that you control, and some things that you don't control. And the intent of these standards is not to force you into a fruitless effort to try to gain control over something that won't be possible, but rather, as I said, to articulate the aspiration for the kind of behavior that we'd like to see seminaries following. And so we're anticipating that we'll be modifying standards as we move through the program to fit the content needs of different schools. So with that in mind, there are 5 focus areas which Sarah mentioned previously. I won't read them all now, but you have them here on the slide in front of you. And I'll go through very briefly a top-line summary of these requirements with the aim of giving you a flavor of what these are about. The first area, which is fundamental, is that of education. We expect that there'll be a certain amount of eco-theologically themed coursework on an annual basis during the course of seminary's time in the program. We also ask that schools integrate and implement environmental themes or ecological justice themes into the kinds of spiritual formation activities that they share with their students. So that when students are taught about what does it mean to pray, or how does one pray, that themes related to the care of creation and the unjust impact of pollution on those who are poor is something that's highlighted and integrated into that. We also, in the educational area, would like to see faculty take part in continuing education of some kind in this area, so that the faculty who are teaching and nurturing students and shaping student sensibilities and awareness over time get the opportunity to continue to grow and develop themselves. So those 3 areas of integrating ecological themes into coursework, into spiritual formation, and into ongoing faculty development are areas where there are requirements in the program. Laurel, this is a particular area of expertise for you. Would you like to say anything else to
I'm sorry, I lost you there.
I just said since this is such an area of expertise for you, I wondered if there's anything that you'd like to add.
Well, what we really are hoping here is that in order for an institution to really claim this, that integrating this into the curriculum goes beyond the elective course that's offered sometimes by an adjunct or, once every 2 years, into really talking about how does it get embedded in your core courses, your required courses, the ways that make it not just a sort of peripheral concern, but that it's owned much more by the institution. And so there's both that built into the requirements, but there are also electives that help you think about the ways to do that. And one of the things is to see a progression over the 3 years of it becoming more and more embedded in the curriculum. And of course, we recognize that for faculty to do that, often what stops them is they just don't have the resources, the knowledge. And so part of what we will have on the website and continuing opportunities is for faculty to learn from other faculty, to learn from other syllabi, ways to integrate, because this is a huge arena of concerns, as Fletcher was already articulating.
Great, thanks, Laurel. So the second area that I'd like to review briefly, in which we've got requirements, is the area of liturgy and ritual and worship. And so what we'd like to ask seminaries participating in the program to do is firstly to incorporate ecological themes, environmental themes into the liturgies, the worship services, the rituals that take place as part of seminary life. And so that's one of the areas of requirement in this area. The second thing that we'd like to see from seminaries is we'd like to see that as they train their students in how to create and craft and shape liturgies or worship services, that there needs to be, as part of that education, a discussion of worship services that integrate ecological themes, environmental themes, and that there also needs to be within courses about the interpretation of sacred texts or preaching. There needs to be a mention, a substantive mention of ecological and environmental themes within that portion of the educational program of a seminary also. So two areas in this liturgy, ritual, and worship area. One is actually incorporating environmental themes into the worship services at seminaries, and the second is integrating ecological content into the coursework related to worship and ritual that seminaries offer. The next area, which covers several slides, is the area of buildings and grounds. And we've got requirements here in the areas of energy conservation, water conservation, waste reduction, materials use, and access to nature. And rather than going into these requirements in detail, what I'll say is that in each of these areas, we ask that seminaries, first of all, assess their current practices in relationship to each of these areas, and then create and implement a plan to reduce their environmental impact in each of these four areas. The access to nature is a slightly different kind of area within this subject matter. So with energy conservation, for instance, there's a requirement for an energy audit for school facilities. As part of, I should mention with that, as part of the tuition payment that schools make, we provide an energy audit, or we offer an energy auditor who is able to provide such an audit for schools. Some schools have a local auditor that they'd prefer to use, and that's fine. But we do have an auditor that we make available for this purpose. Water conservation, as I said, again, a basic audit, and then steps to reduce water usage and to protect water quality. Waste reduction, again, starting with a waste audit, and then developing and implementing a waste reduction and recycling program. Materials use, assessing what kinds of materials, office supplies, paper, that the cleaning materials and chemicals that the school uses, and developing a plan to transition towards more environmentally preferable approaches. Access to nature, making sure that regardless of the setting of the seminary, that there is some kind of effort made to connect students and faculty in the seminary community with the outdoors, wherever that seminary is, so that if it's in a rural setting, that would look one kind of way. I went to a seminary in New York City, would look very different there. But again, the thoughtful kind of effort to connect students with nature. Food services and community ecological practice are the two sections that make up the fourth requirement area of community life. With food services, we would like to see schools offering vegetarian, organic, and locally sourced food options and seeking to reduce their food waste. When it comes to community ecological practice, we'd like to see participating schools communicate on a consistent basis with their communities, with their students, faculty, and staff about the school's commitment to environmental protection and care, and to have various trainings and orientations in place in order to help the community understand that. And then the fifth area is the area of public leadership. We are asking schools to develop a statement of some kind about why and how the greening of the seminary is mission enhancing. We'd like to ask for a modest level of education for the board or governing committee for the school about the commitment that the seminary has made, about their progress in the program, and about the accomplishments that they're enjoying. We also would like to see some procurement policies put in place so that the work that seminaries do is not dependent on one person, but rather is codified in the form of policy. And so I think what I'd close in terms of saying, just very briefly to review the 5 areas, I'll scroll back through the slides quickly, are education, liturgy and ritual and worship, buildings and grounds, community life, and public leadership. And the final thing I'll say before passing back to Sarah and then opening up for discussion is that in the details of these requirements, we've very intentionally created a very strong balance between what we would call sort of public advocacy style engagement on environmental issues, which looks particularly at issues of environmental racism and environmental injustice, the impact of pollution on society's most vulnerable communities, and also balance with individual behavior change in terms of personal consumption habits. We view both of those as being significant. And when you look at the standards in greater detail, I think you'll see that the requirements push seminaries to engage substantively in both of those areas. So Sarah, I'll pass back to you.
Great. Thanks, Fletcher. Well, we have plenty of time, it looks like, to answer any questions that you brought to this call. Some of your questions may already been answered through those presentations. There is a chat feature that you might be able to see on the bottom of your screen that might be a good way for us to manage receiving the questions and seeing how many are queued up behind whatever question we're addressing at the moment. But while you're doing that, I'll go ahead and mention a couple of questions that we've received prior to this call, and we posted them again on the homepage of our website, greenseminaries.org, kind of as a frequently asked questions section of the page. One of the first questions that we received was in regard to the community life standard around food services. It was from a seminary that was part of a university, and so the question was, in their case, a seminary that is a part of a university, do we apply the standards to the entire campus or just to the seminary portion? And the answer to that is that it would only apply to the seminary or to the theological school.
Sarah, I'll cut in briefly because I think Laurel has had her hand up electronically for several minutes, and so we ought to work her in.
Okay, I didn't see that.
Sorry, it was just one more aspect as Fletcher was in there that you'll notice throughout. We also use the language of creation and realize that to work on this topic, we also need to have that awe and wonder and celebration of the sort of glorious world that we have been given. So you'll see the language sort of shift at times, and it's partly just to try and convey those sort of different aspects between sort of individual behavior and institutional behavior, larger issues of justice at times, and also a sense of a groundedness and a spirituality, or of an awesome of creation, or a really sense of inspiration from the natural world. So we're just trying to always signal that we recognize those are all parts of this and may be reflected in slightly different emphases at different institutions. So thank you, Fletcher, for letting me come in on that before we got farther into questions.
Great, thanks. And we've got a question in from Linda Gibler at Oblate. The question is, will the GSI audit material be available to schools not yet seeking certification? And I think the answer to that is yes. Just like all the materials that we have provided so far are already on our greenseminaries.org website. The standards are posted for everyone to see right now, the application, the green team, how to build a green team. And so as the audit is shared, the audit material, that will be shared with everyone as well. The resources, which are a separate item, will be made available initially just to the pilot cohort group of seminaries, but we will be in the process in the next few months of creating a new website for Green Seminary Initiative, and at that point we'll be able to share all the resources with everyone. That won't be password protected and only limited to the 5 or 7 pilot cohort seminaries, but they'll be available for everyone.
Sarah, there are a number of questions that have come in, I think, through the system that are just coming to me, so I might lift up some of those.
Great.
One question that's come in is, have we put standards through a review from the perspective of assessing and sussing out whether they're unduly influenced by white privilege? Which is a really good question. We've had the standards, we've solicited feedback, critical feedback from African American, Latino, and Asian reviewers so far, and have made changes as a result of feedback. It's something that we're continuing to do. We also are in the early stages of sharing the standards with seminaries and seminary representatives in the Global South. And so we'll be having an evaluation from that perspective also. We know that there would need to be some meaningful modifications in the standards to work in that wider context, but it's something, again, that we're committed to in the long term. Another question that came in was about have we thought about awarding, I can't quite tell from the wording of the question if it is sort of a beginner, intermediate, and advanced sort of certification level, or different types of certification. Our experience with the congregational program was that it was really valuable to have a unified process and to be able to work with a select number of institutions at a given time and to have them going through a similar process so that they could interact with each other. As Sarah said earlier, I think that one of the great values of the program is creating a community of seminary leaders who are working on these issues. And so at this point, we've certainly considered doing different types of certification, whether it would be a a bronze, silver, gold kind of approach, or having seminaries just be able to get certified in one of the 5 areas. But as for now, we're working on the holistic program and are going to do that for the next year or so, and then assess where we're. Another question that came in just to me was about the cost of the program, and do we know that seminaries with a lower annual budget can afford the program? And this sort of gives a good opportunity to mention that the tuition for the pilot cohort is a flat fee of $1,500. And we are guaranteeing that seminaries that participate in the pilot cohort will save at least that much money in energy savings during their time in the program, or will very gladly refund them their $1,500 tuition fee. If the fee is an absolute and true hardship, we'll be glad to work with folks, but our experience is that the amount of savings that we generate for institutions through this kind of program exceeds the tuition fee by an order of magnitude. And we're really quite confident in our ability to generate those kinds of savings. So those are the questions that just came in sort of directly to me. So
Great.
I think there are a few others that came in to everybody that you may want to.
Yeah, the Linda Gibler had asked about the audit material and asked when we might see the audit material. Basically, I mean, like I said earlier, the audit material will be a reflection of the standards. So when you look at the standards, I mean, we're going to create a final audit document template based on the standards. We haven't yet finalized that, but it should be available, later this summer, so that in the fall, when your seminaries start working on the audit together, you'll have that in hand. But really, with the standards already in hand, that's pretty much what the audit is going to be based on. So all the information is there. Faith Harris had submitted a question about carbon reduction standards. Will they increase over the course of the certification process and beyond? I don't know that we've really addressed that any more than what we have already stated in the standards.
Yep, and I might speak to that a little bit. Sarah, what we've decided to do in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions reduction is we're asking participating schools, first of all, to establish their baseline energy usage level, and then over the course of the program to reduce that energy usage and their carbon footprint by at least 10% or more. We're having some discussion internally about elevating that standard slightly, because the 10% figure in our experience is very easy to meet. And we also will be supporting schools through technical assistance, education and training that want to go much further than that 10%. But the energy and greenhouse gas emissions requirement for the program is at this stage a flat out 10% reduction over their baseline level. Another question that's come in, 2 other questions. What level of support and information available for schools seeking grant resources for implementing building and facilities improvements? I think that our experience is that the best opportunities for those grant or rebate and incentive programs are very often through the utilities or public utilities commissions in various states, more and more of which have rebate or incentive programs available for various forms of efficiency upgrades or for renewable energy systems. We're aware of many, but not all of those, but we do know how to point people towards the places that they need to look in order to find out what's available. And if schools use the energy auditor that we provide, that energy auditor will identify the relevant rebate and incentive programs within the state where the seminary is located so that you can make the connection in that kind of way. Another question that came just to me, back to the question of cost, was the question of not just the cost of applying to the program, but the time and effort required to identify, to fulfill the requirements. And as an example, the person who submitted the question noted that sometimes even getting electricity bills together can be challenging. We have guidance that we will be providing to schools that are participating about how they can contact their own utilities to streamline that process and to get the utilities to do the work of assembling the necessary bill data. And so we've got a lot of shortcuts that we've identified, and we'll be providing a lot of support in that regard. But I think it's also fair to say that this program is does represent a substantive commitment, and I think it would be wrong to suggest that it's that it's not the case. This program is designed as a transformative program. We've seen consistently with the congregations that we've worked with of varying sizes that if we structure the program so that they work hard and focus substantively on important topics of attention, that really, really powerful things happen. And that's our commitment for this program also, is to make sure that the good effort that seminaries put in pays off in a whole host of different ways.
Right. Fletcher, we've got a question from Hank at Trinity saying, do we have a sense of how shared programs will be weighted towards a school certification? For example, master's level students at Trinity Lutheran Seminary can take courses at MTSO, and in some years that might well be the best option for electives. And I believe we do have that factored into the education section, as that is one way that can count as one of the electives towards certification. There are 3 requirements under education, and then each seminary is expected to complete at least 3 electives, and that is one way to achieve one of the electives. Am I right?
Yep, that's exactly right. We're well aware a lot of seminaries, and this is a really positive development, offer students the opportunity to register for courses in their seminaries in their same geographic region. And we recognize that that's a real value. Again, as we mentioned earlier, and as Laurel mentioned, there is a requirement within the certification program that a seminary must integrate environmental content into a required course, so that it's not only an elective course that's fully focused on the environment, but a required or core course that has environmental content integrated into it as part of that required course. So keep in mind that some of the educational work takes place through electives and some takes place through required coursework.
Right, and that course sharing at possibly even a university setting, it doesn't even have to be at a seminary setting, could be an elective course in ecology or environmental science, or our standards suggest even possibly environmental policy or environmental law, environmental justice, eco-humanities, or related subjects like that. So those are all options for a way to achieve one of the electives.
Sarah, a question that came in to me, and after this, perhaps we might want to leave some time for those who are on the phone to voice their questions because they're not able to use the chat function to send them in. One question that came into me was, how might we respond to people who'd have a criticism or concern that the certification program is politically oriented? I think that, from our perspective, and the materials bear this out, this program is framed as a very genuinely faith-oriented, faith-driven program, and it focuses very holistically on the life of seminaries and on the life of religious leaders. Personal consumption plays into that, so personal behavior, personal virtue, if you will, interpreted ecologically. Spiritual life, prayer life, worship life plays into that. Participation in the public arena plays into that. So I don't think that we would deny at all, rather we'd affirm enthusiastically that there is a public participatory political dimension to environmental engagement. From our perspective, that's unavoidable and it's absolutely necessary. But that's not the only dimension of the program. However, it is a meaningful one.
Okay, I think that's all that we've received through the chat feature. Anyone else out there have a question? You can unmute and let us know what's on your mind.
Felicity Kilchrist, this is a very simple question that I guess didn't go through with the chat feature. This was such a useful overview, the slides you provided. Can we use the same presentation to take to our constituents locally? I have a time scheduled to speak to staff tomorrow and faculty on Friday. So it'd be great to use this ready-made presentation if it's available.
Absolutely. This will be made available. When is your meeting, Felicity?
I have a meeting tomorrow afternoon at Eastern time, 2:30 with staff, and then Friday morning with faculty.
Okay. We already have an introductory presentation that is available to you right now, again, on the homepage of
on the website, yeah.
But that was the one that was done on April 4th. How soon do you think we might have this one available, Fletcher?
I can send the recording over later this afternoon, Sarah. So I think the last one we put up on YouTube.
Yeah.
Was these. I think we ought to be able to have that by tomorrow morning. I don't know. Don't want to speak for your schedule, but if I get it over to you later today,
yeah,
perhaps we can have it up tomorrow midday.
Absolutely.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you. It's I have the materials. I was debating about whether it'd be green to give everybody handouts, so I'd rather not.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thanks. Anybody else?
Sarah, perhaps we ought to go through the application process just for a couple of minutes.
Right. Just a quick summary for the next steps for those seminaries that are interested in participating. Creating a green team. Some of you have already got your team together. Some of you have ideas of different representatives that would serve well on a green team. Reading through and understanding the standards and guidelines. Again, we've got them available to you on the website under the certification program tab. And making a commitment to pay the enrollment fee. I believe it's actually due in October. Isn't that right, Fletcher?
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah.
And it is a reduced fee, basically because of some funding sources that are helping us with this pilot cohort program. And part of the expectation with that reduced fee is even with as much work as we've done and invested to get this ready, and the extensive interviews and everything. We know that it can be improved with your help as we really get going and put the rubber to the road together, and we can, with your input and feedback in the process, we can improve it. Next slide, I think, gets us to the application process. We're in the application period right now, so June 15th is the deadline to get those application forms submitted. They do need to be signed by your dean and or president, and the Green Team commitment form showing that it's not just that you have some names of some possible representatives, but you've got some representative members of your school that understand what it's involved in being on the Green Team, and they're signed on to help lead your school through that process. Then the self-audit, which will begin in the fall, and the board resolution, which is due in January, and the action plan, which is not due until mid-April. Just recognizing that those are steps ahead that you'll agree to when we reach that point in time. Deadline for applications again is June 15th. Then we'll review those applications and we'll announce the selection of the pilot cohort seminaries a month later, mid-July.
A couple of things I'll mention, Sarah, is that we'd said earlier in the webinar that we've envisioned a pilot cohort of 5 to 7 seminaries. But that said, if we do get substantially more than that number of applications, and we see that the applications are solid and that the schools really are ready to go, we recognize that it takes a lot of work and effort to get the stars aligned for a school to come into a program such as this. And so we're going to be flexible in terms of our numbers, wanting to do the best that we possibly can to be able to meet the response. I don't think, I mean, there will be a limit to that. I don't think, for instance, we're in a position where we could work with 20 schools, but if there were 8 or 9 that were interested, I'm quite confident that we could. We also got a question offline from an interested person about what would be the primary criteria that we would use to decide on which schools we selected. And I think that we talked about this internally, and our sense is that there are several things that are important. One is some diversity in terms of both religious denomination or tradition, ethnicity, theological style between more liberal and more conservative. Our aim is to have the cohort be multi-faith. We have at least one Jewish seminary that we hope and believe will be applying. But the most important thing beyond anything else is the readiness of the school. Our experience with the congregational program is that if there are just a couple of enthusiastic boosters for the program in a congregation, that's not enough to make the program a successful or an advisable one. It really is a team effort, and having a well-balanced team of people who are genuinely ready for this is, I think, the most important factor. The Green Seminary Initiative will be offering regular webinars apart from the certification program to help continue the process of enabling seminaries to learn more about what's going on in this area and to develop interest internally. And we will probably in another year's time be welcoming another cohort of schools into the seminary environmental certification program. So this is not the only opportunity that schools will get. But that said, we're eager to have schools that are ready get started as soon as possible with us.
Great. So I think we're ready to close. I just want to thank everyone for participating today. This webinar has been recorded and will be available on the homepage of our website, greenseminaries.org. It will also be sent through our newsletter. If you do not already receive the Green Seminary Initiative newsletter, we'd love to add you to that list. You can email us at greenseminary@drew.edu. We are also on Facebook and Twitter. Green Seminary is a project of Green Faith and Drew Theological School. This is obviously, and for obvious reasons, a program that we are very excited about. Since our beginnings in 2006, our mission has always been to equip religious leaders for the ecological challenges of our day, and we really do believe this seminary environmental certification program is an important step towards bringing an ecological ethos into all areas of seminary life. Following this call, we will continue to be available for further questions and consultation through email and Facebook. So thanks again, everyone, for participating.
Can I add one last thing?
Sure. Thanks, Laurel.
Just a reminder that one of the things we do in the newsletter is we like to tell your stories. And we love to post on Facebook events that are going on at your school so that others know about them. And it's a good way about sending those in too. And then, sorry for my bird clock there. I'll hang up.
The bird says yes. That's great.
It's a very sad sounding owl when the battery runs down.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.